Hello, brothers, and welcome to Heroic Stories. It's a series to strengthen Catholic men with real stories of heroic grit and faith, and it's brought to you from heroicmen.org. I'm your host, Dominic from Heroic Men. Each week, I sit down with a guest to ask them how they made it through their darkest moments, who their heroes were, and who they want to be a hero for. These are real men who've battled doubt, they've sought purpose, and they've changed their lives in ways that can inspire you and me to do the same. These are the stories that remind us that heroism isn't born, it's made. Hi friends, welcome back to Heroic Stories. I'm fortunate today to be joined by Robert Tunmire, one of the co-founders of Heroic Men. It's like 5 years ago or so. Welcome, sir.
6 years ago, coming up
6 years already.
6 years now.
So you're one of the founding inspirations behind the CMLA, the Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance, and then also what Heroic Men is growing to become today and the impact that it is having on men. So I'm grateful to be able to sit down with you and straight up ask you, let's sit down and talk about heroism. There's a lot of young men like my age, there's men closer to your age, and we're all very interested in this topic of heroism. So before getting into some of the, mechanics and theology of it all or something, let's just talk stories. What is a story, a heroic story? It could be about a person or an event or perhaps a movie or something you've experienced or seen that absolutely fires you up. And when you think about heroic action or men being heroic, this story comes to mind. It absolutely fires you up.
Yeah, I got a lot of them just because I have been acquainted with so many men around the world, actually. But one comes to mind is a mentor that I had that I met when I was 16 years of age. And at 16 years of age, I was on my way to debtor in jail and didn't really care which one it was. And so by the grace of God, I happened to meet this gentleman, and he literally helped me rewrite my entire story. And had I not met him, I would not even be anywhere or would have lived the life that I have lived. And when I think back, that was 50 years ago that I met this gentleman come June 1. And literally, the course of my life was totally changed forever. And life is full of defining moments. We all have different ones, and it's a collection of them for most of us. But that was definitely one of the leading ones in my life. And so I met him in June of 1975, and I was fortunate that I was around him. He passed away suddenly December 4th in 1994. And for, those years, I was blessed to be very close to him and with him. And the thing I want to mention about a heroic man, and this is a kind of a tricky one sometimes. This gentleman was incredibly successful, married, 6 children, just incredible man. And just because he was my hero in many, many, many ways, it doesn't mean that he was perfect. We sometimes have this idea that a hero is someone that is perfect. Well, more often than not, a hero is not someone that's perfect, but they were perfect for you at a time in your life. That's how I would look at that.
Can we pull on that thread for a minute? Because you've said this now a couple of times. He redirected your life and he became a hero for you at a specific point. Can we pull on that for a moment? What was going on? And if you hadn't met him, what is likely was going to be your future?
Oh, I was on my way to debtor in jail, literally.
Yeah. Okay.
Not figuratively, literally. And I really didn't care what one it was.
Really?
And what he did is he helped me come to the realization that I could have anything I want, I could do anything I want, I could be anything I want. And all of a sudden, when I had that aha from him, it's just like the world changed. I mean, it was like, I don't have to be like this. I can be anything. I can do anything. I can become anything. I can have anything. Then it just really changed my whole perception of life in the world. To this day, I hold that very true for anybody if they will apply themselves. And I always feel like if I can do it, anybody can do it. But what I didn't learn from him was that there was something even much greater than that in life,
Yeah.
and that was a relationship with God.
Yeah.
And when I was 40 years of age and I was baptized, and I started connecting the dots that the idea that I could do anything I want, have anything I want, was really a gift from God, that thought,
Okay.
and that I should learn how to apply that gift that was given to me, that ultimately is really a gift from God and a grace. I should learn how to apply it the rest of my life for His purpose, His will for my life, not my will. Because up until that point,
Mm-hmm.
it was about me.
Right.
And once God came into my life, it became about using those time, talent, and treasures that were all His anyways. I just never
Mm-hmm.
realized it, but to use them in a different, more meaningful way for His glory, not mine.
For the younger men listening to a show like this, when you say those kinds of things, it makes sense, the first level. Can you walk us through then a little more detail how to understand that these things are gifts from God, and then how do you apply them towards God? If I'm still thinking about rent and I'm trying to date my girl and I'm providing for my family and stuff, to then go to that next level of actually applying all of this at the
Yeah,
service of the highest.
yeah, great question. And I think the key to that is learn to shift your mind from yourself to from me to God. God, what would you have me do for you?
Mm-hmm.
You've given me this time, talent, and treasures. Help me understand how I would use those for your glory. What would I do with the gifts you've given me? Do I bury my talent, the one talent you gave me, or do I use it and multiply it tenfold? And it's funny, I had this conversation with a close friend of mine the other day that he was taking his money, it was essentially burying it
Oh,
rather
really?
than using it for
Mm-hmm.
tenfold multiplication. Um, so, because when you shift yourself from in the concept that you can do anything you want, be anything you want, and have anything you want
Mm-hmm.
is a great concept, and it can make great things happen. But if you tie that to, okay, what does that look like
Mm-hmm.
from a godly perspective,
Right.
not from a Robert perspective?
Right.
You know,
This sounds like, I think it's St. Augustine who said, love God and then do whatever you want.
yeah. I mean, it changes your decision making. It makes you think about things differently. It makes you see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make life easier? Does it make you more perfect? I don't believe it does any of those things necessarily.
Right.
But the outcome at the end of the day will be very, very different. And I can just, you can look at this first 40 years of my life and look at the last 26 and see what took place. I mean, like, It's like almost night. It's literally night and day different. Just because God came into my life. Well, I still had this experience from my mentor for the first 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
which helped me get to a certain point. And I always, here's a simple way of looking at it. I spent years and years reading every sales book, every management book, every leadership book, read everything I could get my hands on, every CD, went to trainings and stuff. And I now realized that had I started studying scripture and really applying it in my life, at the end of the day, I really believe I would have been 10 times more successful.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't think there's any leadership, any management book, any economic book really that you could not trace back the roots to scripture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm absolutely convinced of that. And that sounds pretty crazy to say.
I was going to say, could you just tease out one example that's really landed for you that you wish others knew?
Yeah. Well, think about your time, your talent, and treasures. I mean, those three are talked about in scripture all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a simple choice to make. You use them for yourself or you use them for God. And it's kind of like the rich man when he said, I've done all these things. And Jesus says, then sell all you have and follow me. Now, he wasn't saying you sell everything necessarily, but it was more your attachment. What's your attachment? What's your love?
Or anything else you'd like to add to all that?
Yeah, so here's another way to say it. So I was taught a saying when I was young, and it ties to what the scripture I just talked about. If you're not willing to risk what you got, keep it because it's all you're going to get. And from a very worldly perspective, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But from a godly perspective, if you want it all, then surrender it all to God because He's all there is.
I think you've mentioned in the past that you're from your father was in the military,
Yes.
and so what if I could, reading between the lines of what you're saying here, it sounds like what this mentor gave you, you weren't getting in your life, and it was like hearing this for the first time.
Yeah, my dad was an incredible man, still is. He'll be 89 this coming Saturday, and love him dearly. We have an incredible relationship, but his upbringing wasn't the best. He quit high school, joined the Marine Corps when he was 17, and his concept of raising us. I mean, he taught me to be hardworking and honest, but it just it wasn't that vision of life. And I wish that all young people at a young age could realize what the opportunities that they have before for them are. And it doesn't matter your background, your race, any of that, because we were all raised. And I don't think there's such things as perfect upbringings, perfect parents. We all have circumstances. And what happens is a lot of times those circumstances that we manage to find ourselves in or grow up in or whatever the case may be becomes the story of our lives. And the reality is they don't have to be the story of your life.
So what did you do next after hearing this new manifesto for your life? What did you do with yourself?
I started mapping out. He taught me how to map out what I wanted to do with life. Life is comprised of 6 areas: spiritual, family, physical, which is your health, mental, your mind, social, what are you giving back, and financial/career. And so I started mapping out what that looked like to me and where I wanted to be 12 months from now, 5 years from now. And so what it led me to do is make some very crazy decisions.
Really?
I quit high school about the third week of 11th grade because I was wasting too much time in high school. And I went and opened up a business.
Really? What was
And
the
business
business?
was a franchise of a carpet cleaning company. That's what my mentor had started, this carpet cleaning franchise. And I told him I wanted to go open up a franchise when I was 17. And he says, "Oh, you can't do that. The franchise wouldn't be binding." But ultimately, he said, "Okay, well, Robert, go for it."
Why
And
did
my
he say
mom,
yes? What was it about you that, looking back on that now?
I think he saw that I was a hard worker, and I got the message that he gave me. He knew my determination, and even my mom and dad. I went to them and said, "Look, I want to quit high school and move to Lubbock, Texas, which was about 8 hours from where we lived, and open up a franchise. And I need to borrow $4,000." And my mom and dad, they didn't have $4,000. My older brother, was just starting college, and they, had to put up their car as collateral for a loan at the Federal Credit Union. Mom went to school, signed me out, and, and I mean, you know, all those things. There's nothing that as your parents would have done this. I mean, it just goes beyond any normalcy. But my parents saw what had been taking place with me in the last 5 months. And I probably would have figured out how to do it without them. So
How
they
did, I
did
mean, that
that.
sounds like it was a lot of pressure. You must have been feeling a lot of pressure. How did you channel that?
I just went out and did exactly what I was trained to do. And I'll never forget driving from Waco, Texas to Lubbock. Just quit high school. I was 17 years of age, had $500 in my pocket, owed the credit union $4,000. Don, $6,000 on the franchise, $6,000 on my truck. I was scared to death. I mean, I can remember driving to Lubbock, Texas and thinking, what did I just do? Because I burned the ships. There was no going back.
Really?
Yeah,
No plan B?
there was no plan B. And so, yeah, I went out and just did, but I had this belief, this unshakable belief that Don had instilled in me that I wouldn't fail.
Wow. I'd really like to go to unpack that and understand that, because for something to become a belief, especially when you didn't have that belief, like you just said, 5 months ago, you were looking down the barrel of life or however, and now to have it be such a belief that it's changing your life, it sounds to me like this is more than just a 2-bit conversation at a parish hour that turned your life around. Like something happened there. Was it maybe just you were ready to finally hear it and it finally landed?
Yeah, I think, what's the old saying? When the student's ready, the teacher will show up. And it was just God's providence. And it was not a spiritual thing at all. Oddly enough, it was, he, he took me under his wing and just started coaching me. And next thing I knew, I was thinking, shoot, you know, yeah. He told me, go get this book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So I went back, bought this paperback book, and it really talked about how to use your brain and how you could accomplish anything you want. And I just thought, well, gosh, I can do that. Why? There was nothing in me that thought, well, why can't I have anything I want, do anything I want, be anything I want? Yeah, it just, yeah.
How did you meet your mentor?
He moved to Waco, Texas for a business he was in summer '73, and 6 children. And that's when Dad got out of the Marine Corps, and we moved back to Waco, which is where he was from. And there was a small community outside of Waco called China Spring. And his oldest daughter and I happened to be in the same class. It's a very small class. I mean, it was like 30 kids in the class. And we became friends, and her father needed a hand for a day, and she knew I worked a lot. I had jobs.
Gotcha.
And she gave him my parents' phone number, happened to be on a day off from my other job. Purely just, divine. It was just
providential. All right, let's go into the next major then question. I think it dovetails. So you just outlined, like you said, you drove to a whole new town, you started a new life, $500 in your pocket. So now I want to ask, after that point, what was the next hardest thing that you ever did in your life? Maybe you might look back at yourself with a bit of pride and go, okay, wasn't clear then. I might call that maybe heroic now for who I was back then. But in the moment, it just felt like the worst and only choice possible or something.
I don't know that, anything really happened significantly. I just went about living and doing life and what I was, I can tell you probably the biggest mistake I made.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. In 1982, I was responsible for an abortion. And, if I look back and reflect, mistakes made, I made a lot of mistakes, obviously, but one that really stands out even to this day, that would stand out into one of the biggest mistakes that I ever made. And probably did not realize the magnitude of it until we had our first son when I was 31 years of age. And, one of the things about that particular event of being responsible for an abortion, and most men, you don't hear it much because society doesn't really tell you there. We know it, but every time there's an abortion, there's a man responsible. And most people don't realize it, but that experience for the man, and while you're forgiven and you're healed, the thought of what might have been never goes away. Well, that's probably a different answer than you wanted, but that's that's an important lesson learned.
What did you do with that then? I mean, I imagine there's the pain of that. What was the lesson that you went on to apply, like you said, after your first child?
How to be a good father, and try to live my life in a much better way. And I've tried over the years to help young men and men, recover from the wound of that mistake.
Really?
Yeah. When I speak at men's conferences and I happen to share that part of the story, it is absolutely amazing how many men come up to me and said, I can relate. I was responsible for an abortion, blah, 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 blah. My wife doesn't know about it. I didn't know her then. My kids don't know about it. I mean, the stories are just, because we just, there's 50,000 abortions a year. That means 50,000 men are involved.
Right. And then still carry that.
Yeah.
They don't know how to process
and
or what
that's
to do
just
with
in
it.
America.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sounds like mentoring is now a big deal for you because of how it was gifted or given to you. And then now you're continuing to do that yourself, either to other men or to other young men. Is that true?
I have a real passion for mentoring men. I mentor at least 10 people at any given time. And it's not just the absolutely young people. I do work with a lot of young people, but it's also men that might be transitioning out of a business and need to make some decisions. They don't have someone to talk to about making those decisions. Or another thing I talk to a lot of men about are men that are reaching, the time they're going to leave their career. And what does that look like? What does life look like when you leave your career? That's a very difficult time in a man's life. So I work with a fair number of men in that transition. My passion really is I like working with young men, helping them get on the right path. And I got some young men that I've been mentoring for 7, 8 years.
Really?
Yeah.
What's been one of the most dramatic stories of someone who's implemented your advice and gone on to do good things?
Oh, gosh. There's been so many over the years. One that's kind of still current is I met these two men. They came to a men's group we launched in one of the parishes here in Waco. They were two brothers. And this was about 7 years ago now. They were they both had college degrees, but were just trying to find their way. And, they were Catholic and had so little understanding of their faith. And they had this real estate partnership with their dad that was an absolute mess, and just, really fine young men, but just no understanding of where to go and how to get there. And if you met both of them today and listened to their story, it's phenomenal. And I still see them once a month to this day. So, and there's a lot of those stories, and it's never, one area of life. It's always working on all 6 areas of life, because you really need to do that. And there's a lot of people that I've mentored over the year, and I may mentor them for a year. I may mentor them for 2 years, and then they go on. Mentoring, this idea that it's a long-term thing. It's not necessarily a long-term thing. It can be a short period of time, or it can be just helping someone with one particular life circumstance that they're going through. And I think as men, we need to especially reach out to our young men and be there for them, because I don't think mentoring is really a common thing these days. You don't have men my age. I really believe that any man that's 50 years of age or older should be mentoring at least one other young person. If one man 50 years of age or older would mentor just one young person, we could change the world.
Absolutely.
You never know with the right mentoring, the impact that it can have. And I think we really underestimate that and take it for granted. And mentoring is not complex. It's just coming along another man and being there for them, listening to them, and sharing whatever wisdom you might have with them. And once again, it doesn't mean that the knowledge that you have is perfect and it's always going to be spot on, but being there for that man is really, because most men do not have someone there for them.
Would you say that's a hallmark of how you approach mentoring compared to the other mentors and mentor styles that are out there? Would you say this is your approach, is walking alongside a man?
Yeah, absolutely. I think being there in a very real way in whatever situation they're needing a hand with, and it may be all 6 areas of life, it may be in a specific one, just really being available and there for them. And not being judgmental. Just realize that we're all on a journey, and we all need someone to travel that journey with, and especially men, because men will die quiet death before asking for help. That's our nature.
Why do you think we do that? Why do you think we have a hard time asking for help?
Pride, ego, all those elements of being a man.
What are some things that you now believe makes for a good man compared to 30 years ago? Like what you just said, we all think like be a man is like, channeling a bit of Father Larry Richards, gravelly voice here. But Now that you've been around the block a couple of times, I imagine your definition of a good man is a bit different than when you were starting out. How has it
Yeah,
changed?
I think realizing that life is not overly complex. We make it more complex. Everything in life comes down to about a half dozen things. Don't complicate it, and realize that it's in God's hands and we're just called to do our part. And as I've said before, just get up every day and do your 10% the best you can do and let God do the 90. And it doesn't mean, I mean, that's in your career, that's in everything, because we think we got to do the 90, and you're never going to do the 90 that good. But I can do 10% good and let God do the 90. Because if we try to do the 90, we're going to mess it up.
Frankly, I think we try to do the 90. God just throws his hands up and goes, okay, it's on
Yeah,
you. And maybe there's some winnings, but you're going to completely burn out.
yeah.
And then what good is that? I want to come back and ask about, so heroic men, right? And heroes and heroism a little bit. But before doing that, a lot of where we are today and the fact that I have a position, a job, is because of the fact that you stepped up one day with a couple of other men and you created CMLA and you created heroic men and you started in your hometown. And a lot of what we now do and we bring to other men around the country is stuff that you workshopped and field tested in your backyard. What has been that experience for you, building up brotherhood and, this ministry to men thing that you've been
Yeah,
championing now?
yeah. And the reason that I got involved with it is I didn't live a Christian life. I was never baptized till I was 40. And shortly after being baptized, a friend of mine said, "Hey, Robert, this guy is speaking at Columbus Avenue Baptist Church. His name is Patrick Morley. And he wrote a book called Man in the Mirror." And I went and heard him speak and got the book and read it. And it was a story of my life. And Pat and I struck up a relationship, and that's where I really learned ministry to men and the impact that ministry to men can have on our men and how important it is. And even to this day, I'm on the board of Man in the Mirror. I had breakfast with Patrick Morley a couple of weeks ago down in Orlando.
Yeah.
And after becoming Catholic, I thought, well, gosh, we need to be doing this in the Catholic Church. And that's what led me into ministry to men in the Catholic Church.
It's been,
I have a passion for ministry to men.
you've dealt with a ton of men and you've been to conferences and you've been doing this now for a long time. What's one of the wildest stories that you've met or experienced from a man whose life was changed because of ministry to men?
I don't want to give a specific, but one thing that stands out over and over again is how we'll encourage men to step up and do something. And they're like, "No, I can't do that. No, I'm not. That's not me." And by encouraging them and be there for them, it is absolutely astounding over and over again how these men will rise up and over time accomplish things that they'll look back on and go, "Oh, I can't believe I can't believe we've done that." Just present men the opportunity to be what they can be and encourage them. I mean, I think seeing that so many times, and I could give story after story that just, yeah.
Can you give us one
I'll
without
give
maybe
you one.
names? Yeah.
I'll name a name. There's a guy. He's a regional force out in California already. And when I met Gil, who was working for UPS, worked a night shift, and was involved in a men's group. And it was time to start transitioning out of leadership. And we encouraged Gil to start getting involved in leadership. And he was like, no, I can't. That's not me. And here he is. He runs the Catholic Men's Organization in California now, and he's a regional. And the impact that Gil's had on men and continues to have on men, and 10 years ago, he would have, no, 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 no. And that is one of the most common things we see over and over again.
Amazing, amazing. Well, last question for you then, sir. Who are the heroes to you in your life? Right, you've already mentioned your mentor. So apart from him, who are other people that you look to and seek to emulate or inspire you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of them around that one of our board members I have a lot of respect for, Kevin O'Brien. I like his spirit. And there's another gentleman that I have become acquainted with. He was one of the founders, Matthew Christoph, who is just a very devout Christian guy, Catholic guy. But there's something about Matthew that inspires me to be better. And I probably don't say that to him enough, but he had a quiet but yet powerful impact on my life.
Could you say more?
About him?
Yeah, about like what that impact was and what you learned or took from that.
Just to go deeper in my faith and live it more. And Matthew had a very successful business career. And even to this day, what he does inspires me. So, yeah. I look at him, he does things like, I wish I could do some of that, I mean, it's just like, yeah.
Amazing. So last question then, after all of that, how would you define a hero or somebody, not just an imaginary heroic man, but somebody who would be a real life heroic man? How would you describe or define that?
I would say a real life heroic man is someone that probably a lot of other men or a lot of other people don't recognize as a hero, but that person is a hero to somebody. That's probably what I would say, because most men that are a hero to somebody, most of the time they never knew it. Yeah.
I think that's a great place to wrap.
Yeah, so what I would say is try to be a hero for somebody.
Thanks for joining us on Heroic Stories. If this story connected with you, send it to someone. And if you want to chat with us about anything that we've said, head on over to our community at heroicmen.org. We're here for every man out there who feels they're made for more, has the faith to step up, and doesn't know what to do. Come and share your journey with us. Can I share something about a group of men like you? The Heroic Men app is powered by an alliance of supporters. They step up so that others can access life-changing content and community at no cost. Right now, there's another man out there who needs stories and content like this. Maybe he can't even afford a bus fare to Mass. Maybe it's a teen questioning if he matters at all. And maybe it's a father searching for real brotherhood. Your $5 a month covers his ability to access this content. One more soul reached, one more life changed. $5 a month, that's it. If you can, consider paying it forward today. And if you can't, share Heroic Men with another man. That alone could bring another man back to faith in Jesus Christ. And here's how we give even more back to you. Every donor is welcome to join an exclusive group inside our online community. We want to learn from you and work with you to strengthen men so that no man is left behind. Visit heroicmen.org today to stand with us. Someone paid it forward for you. Now will you do the same?